নিশ্চয়ই আপনারা নোটিস করেছেন যে অন স্টেজ we do not have গৌতম ঘোষ. গৌতম ঘোষ একটু আলাদা দেখতে. He hasn't been able to come, and so we've had to slightly change the session to accommodate his absence, as it were. We were very, very lucky to have Supriyo Sen present at the new festival for the session on Mrinal Sen, which was happened a little earlier. And we are very also honored and lucky to have Anshuman Dasgupta from Santiniketan, who is an art historian. What we will do today is start off by talking about the film, The Magic of Making. This is a film that Gautam Ghosh has made. Some of you may have seen it. How many of you have seen this film? Okay, so quite a few people in the hall know the film. We screened it or just on Friday the 3rd at Earth Sheila as a joint presentation. And the film was a documentary about the famous artist K.G. Subramanian or Manida, who many of you in Santiniketan knew or knew of well. So after that, we will discuss a little bit about the film from an art historian's perspective, from a filmmaker's perspective. And then we will talk about this conversation that can happen between artists or documenting the artist and their work and the documentary filmmaker's approach. So Supriyo has himself, he started as a documentary filmmaker, I think.
I am a documentary.
Okay, so you insist on claiming that, yes. He has made fiction film as well,
Yes.
but I think we all primarily know him as an award-winning documentary filmmaker, and he also understands the process of documentary filmmaking, as he was talking about earlier, in a very different way from fiction filmmaking. So this is of course the discussion will take. So I would like to start by asking Anshuman to please talk a little about this film, which many of us have seen. So not so much describing the film, but commenting on the film that was made about this artist as a documentary. Got your mic?
Sure. Hello. It's okay. So, primarily the dynamics of documentary making is such that on an artist, especially an artist of the dimension of K.G. Subramanian, who traverses all the areas of art, in fact, it's a very difficult proposition, primarily. There have been three different documentaries, so far as I know, on K.G. Subramanian, in one of which I was directly involved. And it's a very, very critical kind of point you reach at which you have to decide intellectually as to at the editing table as to what to take, what not to take. Apart from confronting a brilliant intellectual, an artist who you can call by the Chinese term literati, we call literati, and Santiniketan has a huge contribution towards that genre of artist scholar or scholar artist. So he is a performer. Subramanian, we grew up with his kind of legacy and have seen him very closely as a student. So confronting him is always a challenge, but then later on it becomes fun because he's an artist who is serious and also playful at the same time, which is something he sort of owes to many artists of Santiniketan and perhaps you can call it Bengal school, if you say Abhindranath. His writings always are kind of filled with quotes from them, and his art is a quote from many sources. So in a sense, he's full of those, he's a kind of inventory himself of various sources, amalgamating in one person. So in a sense, unpacking that source, just interviewing him, and this particular film is interview-based largely. It's a conversation between Shomik Bandyopadhyay largely and Subramanian. Both are brilliant in their own ways. And so conversation itself is a gem of a thing. But then, from the filmmaker's point of view, the challenge is as to how to kind of go beyond or inside the conversation. So that is the challenge. The film is rife in those challenges. It shows in many ways as to what the challenge to a filmmaker could be. Because I was witness to this, at least two of these films. Second one is Shaji's. Again, incidentally, both of them are cameramen, trained as cameramen, cinematographer. Gautam Ghosh is trained as cinematographer. Shaji Karun, the Kerala director, very famous for his Pidorvi, is also a cinematographer. So primarily you see that there'll be always a person who has seen all three films will be comparing them in their head, definitely. So, but then if you are lucky if you haven't seen all three, then you will not compare. Then you will probably see this film in its own merit. And there you see that he's more or less following the track. But what we notice in the film is that how he follows up on the conversation, whether he, does the visual as a prologue to the conversation or an epilogue to the conversation, or it sort of overlaps with the conversation. So these are the decisions that director makes generally. And then there are layerings of sound largely, not many layerings of visual as such, no jump cut, no montage, nothing, no extra tricks. So kind of a plain wide-angle shots. Main features is wide-angle shots. And even in interior he is using wide-angle, if I have noticed. I'm just taking permission from Supriyo, who is a trained filmmaker himself, and Anjum, who is very trained critic. So to use that term, he's using wide angle in interior, which is a very difficult proposition from a filmmaking point of view. Normally they do it, they use a 50 normally for the interiors and tight frames. But he is showing somehow many of these scenes are like straight frame, face on, and they are room within rooms. Like this frame enters into another frame, enters into another frame. Many a times, this is a technique that miniaturist in India uses. So in a sense that Gautam Ghosh uses his cinematographer's sensibility to kind of come closer to this part of the Indian sensibility in which room within room within room is a kind of possibility. So which is kind of not normally is not noticeable. He's not doing it obviously, unlike Mani Kaul or many other people does in Indian cinema, but he is framing it like that. And also noticeable is extremely well-crafted lightings, because he's a cinematographer, and cinematographer primarily has to know the lighting. Extremely controlled lighting. One or two cases he's doing a very quick shots, taking quick shots, because Subramanian is also super busy. Shomik Bhai is super busy, so two super busy people don't give you too much of time to set it up. So in a sense, some shots are casual, most of them are done in a very, very careful way. Yeah, and there are these cut-ins and cutaways, which are also, to a filmmaker, is a very common, sensical thing. That means that what do you cut into within a film to give an interruption? Not to jolt, but to make sense of what he is saying. It's a very important proposition, very important question. So these are things to notice. That much I can say is because the film is not there in front of you. In absence of the film, I can use pointers, I can use indexes. I can't use a completely descriptive note, though I have taken a huge amount of descriptive notes on what is happening, where it's happening. The film is filled with gem of sentences from Subramanian and Shomik both. It will kind of, as a student, if I recount, he says that, a very interesting thing, he says that when you learn, a good teacher grows with you, you never realize what he has taught you. So in a sense that a good teacher doesn't instruct you directly, but he teaches by example, which was the case with Santiniketan until his time, and because of various factors, that syllabus enters into the process, comes on your way, chops up the entire continuum into what you call semester system, and then various other things. So gives it a jolt. So otherwise it was a continuous system in which seasons came in festivities came in which people's participation mattered and community got built. Communities of people, viewers got built, which is most important in case of art and its sustainability. Plus, in addition, there are snippets of Nandan Mela and Baroda festivals. Subramanian is not bereft of his social concerns. He is the one who wrote in Vrishchik. In Baroda, published a journal called Vrishchik in the 70s, and he 67 to 70, and in that many of the great authors today wrote. Not only authors, but painters also wrote. Bhupen Kakka's essay is there. Subramanian's essay on art and society is there. The role of artist in society, it's called. So then radio talks are there. So 3 radio talks altogether. We reprinted them in London, but otherwise it was there in Baroda, in Vrishchik. So in a sense, an artist who intervenes into the critical field with his amount of knowledge and wisdom is also hugely rich. So his entire repertoire is hugely rich. He even trained a lot of art historians. One among them is Gita Kapoor.
Yes.
So you can see that he produced the art historical scenario in sitting there. So an artist helping the art historians, theoreticians, and general community building is an unusual example. And confronting him, anybody, a filmmaker especially, coming for the first time into the scene, will be awestruck with the amount of knowledge and wisdom he has to rummage through before he arrives at his shots.
Yeah. So in fact, you raise a very interesting point, that the question of choice and selection, that K.J. Subramanian presents a subject which has so many complex layers, so many aspects, that this question of deciding, so are we going to focus on this? Are we going to show him as this kind of figure? Is it his murals we look at? Is it his community involvement? You know, there's a question of how do you select, and I'm going to, at that point, try and involve you, Supriyo. But one thing I wanted to add to what he said about the film is another thing I found really interesting is when he talked about how the filmmaker, Gautam Khoj, didn't use very quick cuts and montage elements. He did use montage in a sense because he was going through various images that Subramanian had done. But the pace of the film also was something that struck me. It followed conversation. You know, the conversation was at the center of the film, or the various types of, the various editions of conversation, because they happened in different places and at different times. And the conversation set the pace of the film, I felt. So everything, the way, the rhythm of the film, even when there were landscapes being shown, even when there was nature being shown, but nothing to do specifically with the work of art, even then that continued, that conversational pace continued. And I thought that was also quite an interesting aspect. But tell me something, as a filmmaker, you, with a subject like K.J. Subramanian, have you got anything you'd like to comment on in the film which you noticed or which you feel you'd like to mention?
See, it's not very easy to, delve into a life like K.J. Subramaniam. It's like, it's a life of epic proportion, you know. And he, luckily, he has a long life, and he has been practicing till,
Right,
yeah.
In fact, the film covers his 90th birthday.
Yeah. So for a filmmaker, it is not very easy to take to decide on which path he or she will take, because there is a possibility of this kind of testimony-based films becoming documentation rather than cinema. So one has to artistically also, go through a very challenging process to, on the one hand, give some information, on the other hand, to make it creative and cinematic. Because here the problem is very critical you are delving into a life of an artist, visual artist. So, and cinema is also a visual medium. So, to balance these two mediums together and get something really creative out of it is a huge challenge for a filmmaker. And when you make a sort of documentary on life like KG Subramaniam, there is always an expectation that you also get information about that life. So that's a huge burden on the filmmaker. And so after dealing with all these expectations and burdens, and then you decide on which way you should take with certain stories and characters. So I believe it's this particular film has, tried to travel, between of this kind of dynamic situation and different kind of expectations, and it's reached to a, I think, a decent kind of conclusion where we can have a idea at least when the artist speak. As he mentioned, there are some jewels in the interview. So when the artist speaks, it's really great.
Yeah. In fact, what you were saying, it really strikes me because in Manida, you had, as he started by saying, you had a scholar who wrote extensively on art and on art criticism. And as opposed to many other artists I can think of, who would prefer not to speak at all, who would prefer just to let their work speak for themselves. So that, in a sense, is a different kind of choice if you're a documentary filmmaker. But with Manida, there is also the overriding importance of his voice being heard. So, which is there at the center of the film. But then, do you stick to just the voice being heard and talking about his work, or do you also show and what the work, which I think he does cut away to the work very often. But also one of the things I noticed very strikingly, and the camera was handled by Ishan Ghosh, his son, right? So, who is a filmmaker now in his own right. But one of the striking things was the framing. You know, there were these very unusual shots that in some way almost kind of reminded you of some of the frames that Subramanian himself created. You know, strange angular shots of animal figures taken from unusual perspectives and points of view. Actual animals, not of the drawings or the art that he produced, but they reflected a kind of way of seeing that was quite interesting.
Yeah.
Anything more you want to add on that?
Yeah, I think since you say about animal, I just say cut-ins, cutaways. So I just add a few, those scenographies that he had just introduced there. There's one of which, with animals, very still shot, was taken in a beach, in a sea beach, and waves breaking on one side, and there's mute cows standing there. The black and white cows almost. Ishan Ghosh has handled the camera. Gautam Ghosh has a tendency to shoot day for night, basically. I've seen that from Par onwards. That day for night, many of the shots in Par are day for night shots. Yeah, there's a blue filter. So basically, here also there are these techniques used to saturate, desaturate. There's these saturation points which were very controlled. And so that is something also struck me, that he is kind of doing this saturation point while music is also chosen in such a way that it's kind of played in, it's just very faint sound coming sometimes when the Lalan song is being played, etc. Because it doesn't need the loudness, because he has mellowed his voice when he talked about either violence or he talked about the animosity in the society. So there he talks about that this, in the context of Hindi Bhavan mural, the Bhakti movement, etc., how images are juxtaposed by Vinod Virian, from which he learned. So he said that in the last phase he got involved as his ill luck, he says, and of the mural, and he learned a lot from that experience. He said that's why he says probably that in the end he chips in and says that a good teacher is such that you don't realize while walking, while learning, that you are learning something. So maybe in the end of the day you realize that how much you learned from them. So so they're non-interfering teachers like Gay and Kinds, even Nandalal sometimes. So they sort of train and let you go on your path. So in a sense, when you see that you're going on your path, you found your path, then they let you go of the institution. At the time, the rewards was that. So, so he, in a sense, very subtly brings that in, brings in anthropological aspects, brings in many other aspects, like I said, the spiritual aspects of the Bhakti movement, the innate current, and so on and so forth. Plus, the figuration, the morphing aspects of art, which is very important, that sort of comes through in his making, because Gautam Ghosh got a like really rare chance.
See him actually.
Yeah, him doing the glass painting was a complete demonstration. So that's why maybe the film is a bit stretched, but he didn't cut into it. Yeah.
In fact, let's. Asking you, Supriyo, you yourself have made some documentaries on artist work, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that and the kind of choices or challenges that some of the films you
Yeah, I mean, see, basically, there are certain patterns exist in our country in filmmaking, in filming artists, or I mean, like who are famous.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
famous people. So, I dealt with some artists who are not that kind of famous. So I had the opportunity to, I mean, really intervene and take control over the situation. And like as you were saying, they must be, all of them were Shomik Bandyopadhyay and KG, Subramaniam, even Gautam Ghosh. All of them are busy people. So, yeah. I mean, technically to manage the time and, you know, get into serious kind of discourse and get something out of that, sometimes it's really challenging. So, in my case, I have the opportunity to follow Dughushan Chitrokar, the great Potua maestro. But he is a very humble person with humble economic background, and so I was lucky to have access to his life, to his surroundings. So it was more about, and of course they were not like that celebrated urban artists. Their life is not that much recorded, and probably not that important to the academic community. So it was more about. So I had all the liberty to interject. To decide on the interjection point. So in 15 years, I made 3 documentaries on that community. The first one was about Dughushan Chitrokar. So when I get into in that reality, they were facing very difficult time because the popularity of that traditional art form was not there anymore in the villages, and so they were not earning anything because it was their livelihood. I mean, going to the villages, I mean, after painting the scrolls, going to the villages and tell the stories. So it was not only, just a visual art form, it was also like narrative storytelling, another important form of narrative storytelling. So, so there is a community who are trained to do this and they don't have any job. So, and there is a little bit of interest has grown up in the city for their particular, the style of painting. The urban audience was not interested about the narratives, the Ramayana and Mahabharata, the fascinating stories and songs and the way they performed, it's beautiful. But the urban audience was not interested to that. They were interested to the style of painting, which you can see here. Now it is everywhere. So the film was about this person who are trying to stick to his old tradition of storytelling. So he refused to make anything which is made to fit in urban drawing rooms. Because that actually was barring them to practice their art form in a most vibrant way. Because it's a storytelling form, not just a painting. So the film was about this crisis, this old man who was trying to, defend his fort of belief and tradition, and this new generation were trying to, I didn't have any judgmental kind of stance, what is good, what is bad, but I try to observe that kind of transitional moment in their life, where this maestro trying to retain the purity of his art form, and this new generation were ready to, compromise with the modern market's demand. So it was a journey of that person, which is, I believe, also very eternal. At every point of time, creative people, the artists and writers, everyone has to go through this kind of challenges, whether we retain the traditional practices or we succumb to the demand of the market. So that film was about this.
You said you made 3 films.
Yeah, then it's such a dynamic community. I kept on going back, and so there are phases. Like, then what happened? It is the women who took over the art form, because they had to run the families, and they were facing the crisis, economic crisis. And by that time, being artists, they became also, they were not habituated with the physical labor, So they almost became, all of them, jobless, because the paintings, the rural audience is not anymore interested in this, and they cannot do other jobs. They cannot do farming, they cannot pull van, rickshaw or anything. So it is women who were hard, very, strongly, so they had to take charge. So gradually I witnessed that the women, they are coming out of the villages, reaching to the city. They started painting, and within 5 to 10 years, there is a huge change among the society, where you, in the cities, you keep on watching more and more women. They're coming, they're spending time in the city, which is not very easy for women from the rural background. And also their religious identity is they're Muslims. So the adjacent villages who are practicing traditional religious system, this community was completely ostracized by them, because they allow their women to go out and practice painting. So these women face a lot of problems, but you keep on, seeing them visible in every forum. And within 5 to 10 years, some of them emerged very prominently on the surface, like Rani Chitrakar, Munimala Chitrakar, then Shorno Chitrakar. So I realized that, the community, there is a huge dynamic change is happening in the community through the women, their leadership. So the second film I made on Shorno Chitrakar, it's of course it's sort of biopic, but it was like try to show how this kind of, and it's very rare. In a traditional artist community, when women are taking over, now it is completely taken over by women, the Pottochitra tradition of Bengal, and the men are playing the second film. So there is a feminist angle to it, and also the survival instinct of a traditional art community. So I wanted to see, as I feel comfortable telling stories and following characters. So I found it comfortable to follow Swarno Chitrakar and tell the story of this very significant transitional movement.
And the third film?
The third one was about the new generation, and now they are facing. It's very interesting. See, now they are affluent. That dark days are not there anymore, and they have money, they have success. Many of them are traveling all over the world, and more people are getting engaged in the art form. So, and they are not ostracized anymore. Now people from the other village wanted to get their children married in these families because they are very rich now in that kind of.
And this is through practicing their art.
Yeah, only. They don't know anything else. So, yeah. So very interesting thing happened. The mainstream Muslim society, they barred them from entering their mosque, practice their religion. As I said, that their women don't stay back in home. And on the top of it, they sing. So when they became empowered by earning money and exposure, they set up their own mosque. Yeah. And they invited an imam there. And এটা বাংলায় বলে না খাটখাটি কমিয়ে না এবার একটা নতুন চেঞ্জ হওয়া শুরু হয়েছে যে they never cared about religious practices, and actually they're Muslim but they follow this very যেটা আমাদের
Syncretic.
Exactly. So
adopting different
yeah.
and practices.
So and religious practice, this thing was not very predominant in their day-to-day life. But when they set up this mosque and the imam came, he started preaching the hardcore traditional Islam to these people, and there is a change started happening. The women who were liberated, even these Potwa women, they don't want their girls to be married in other community because they know, first of all, they won't be able to practice their art form if they get married to a general community. Secondly, the kind of freedom women enjoy in this community, that is not possible in a mainstream.
Yeah.
So they don't let their girls go out of their community. Then this mosque is set up, and gradually a religious thing started taking control over the life of the people, and some of them just left practicing and singing, and they started telling that okay, this is haram. And within 5-6 years I have seen there is a structured religious practice, praying namaz 4 or 5 times. These are started there. So see how money and affluence can push you to that kind of situation when you have to start it again. So it's a very interesting and very
journey.
Yes. I was just remembering that episode from Nishta Jain's Photo City, in which you also see that emancipation story narrative played out in a, sorry, it's not working. Emancipatory narrative working in a different direction in the context of photography. Like there's a scene from Ahmedabad in which Muslim women are asked, so they say that you go to haram, it's haram, and you go to dojek and all. So that somehow some of them laughed away and counter question. So in a sense, there's a very very alleviating point in that film in which you also feel, you get goosebumps. Like you think that people can say on camera that. So really liberated. That is a moment of liberation. You're saying it on camera, not shying away, whilst sitting on a swing
Can you believe it that mise-en-scene itself is so... Do you remember any such kind of from your kind of shot takings and moments of narrativizing?
I mean, can you,
Instagrams from Photo City.
Yeah, I have seen that movie. Can you connect me to the context?
The context is that Muslim women from underclass Muslim women, they are narrating their attitude towards photography because their daughters are doing photography.
Yeah.
So the community doesn't accept it. So secretly they are cultivating that habit, and that is prior to mobile phone. But at the time, to train a camera on a subject itself was a kind of act of violence of sorts, like that. The same way Samuel Bone said that it's a replacement for Canon. So photography has that history of.
Now we are taking selfie means putting the Canon on your head.
Right, in a sense, yeah, it's kind of suiciding, almost metaphorically, yes. But that's the moment of liberation.
No, I mean, see, now they're habituated with camera so much that the sanctity of presence of a camera is also gone. You know, of course, you paratroop in other people's life, but there is in most of the cases it's consensual. You know, like it's collaborative. And for that you need to gain the trust of your characters, and it's a two-way process. So I always say that documentary cinema is a very human practice, because you also grow as a human being through this process, because you don't have the option to write a story and put some actors and ask them to act. It's about real life. You start with the idea, you just get into people's life, and you never know how will it end up. And it's always a challenge to deal with or to gain the trust of your people, so that they can open up their lives. Even we don't do that usually to unknown people. So
just taking from both of your comments on the films, one of the things we started with, which you were talking about, Anshuman, was the difficulty of a choice when you face a subject like A.T. Subramanian, of where you're going to put your focus. And if you're going to keep him as a scholar, writer, and he says that in the beginning, that he was a very prolific writer. The voice in the film says that, it introduces him like that. So, then if that's going to be the center of your film, then how do you also make it visual and also make it about an artist, which is somewhat what the film endeavors to do. And sort of relating to that, you had mentioned that when you were making your film, the first one, about this artist dilemma, it's you focused on one particular aspect, which is the crisis that he is trying to deal with as an artist, of how much he's going to compromise or adjust or adapt to the future. So there are two different ways of entering a story, in that. So that's, I think, an interesting connection. But may I ask anybody in the audience if you would like to ask any questions or comment or add anything of your own? Yes, Shami.
So my question is for anybody can take the question, but we know about Google Glass.
About?
Google Glass, where you could wear the glass and it would take photographs. If you go anywhere and you click it on, and it takes photographs, and real time it goes to the internet, which didn't quite take off. But now what is likely to come in is internet contact lenses. So you wear those lenses, you blink, and you connect to the internet. And you can, also take photographs. You can basically see the world wearing those lenses and document it as well, and use the internet as well. So, as a filmmaker, do you think this will be an opportunity, or do you think this is one more case of infringement of privacy? And where do you think this will end, or where is this heading?
see, our privacy is totally. There's nothing called privacy. So it's we are under surveillance every moment. So we don't even should discuss about privacy anymore, because we let it happen. None of us have the morality to discuss about privacy and interference, and because we let it happen, we let it the technology to take over our life, we let the stage to take over our life. So
as a documentary filmmaker, because a lot of times, for certain kind of documentaries, you need to shoot, discreetly. So, suppose you're wearing an internet lens, contact lens, or even a Google Glass, where people don't realize that you're shooting, but you're shooting. So, is that an opportunity?
see, I mean, ethically, it is not acceptable. I mean, even to shoot someone you want to expose, it's not ethically, and it is technically also not possible these days, because there are legalities, there are legal aspects of shooting. I mean, I have seen a film on this very important family in Italy and the leader of this most important fascist party. Probably they are in power now. In last election they came. So I have seen this documentary about this family, how they operate from inside. I mean, you can see everything from their drawing room, and so somehow the director managed to convince him that okay, this is something else. But they had a huge problem after, and they couldn't show the film. There was a huge legal issue. I mean, there comes the importance of fiction cinema, where I mean you can take fictional, but in documentaries it is not very easy anymore to interfere in people's reality, and but it still happens, because if you are portraying the characters, it depends on the story and the character you are following. If it is a character-based story, if you have a good relationship, if you can, if it's a pro-protagonist film, then there can be collaboration. But if we try to get into gray areas, like secret shootings, I mean, it's difficult now.
You want to add something?
I just wanted to chip in because this point connects to the interdisciplinary kind of overlaps. For instance, you have anthropological scenario in which there is this subdiscipline called elite studies, in which not only the elites but the mafias have been studied. So how do you study mafia, for instance, and mafias, and as well as the extreme political groups? Now, sometimes you intervene by befriending. Sometimes you, under false pretense, you just go in somehow.
Embed yourself.
Invade yourself to some extent. There had been studies of Shining Path, for instance, that Marcus very beautifully narrates it, anthropologist, and there you have this huge description of their operative principles, etc., which is totally impossible otherwise.
Yeah.
In the waning days, of course, when they were slightly loose and all that. So there are examples like in which it becomes useful sometimes. Maybe I just reflected on what you said. I am not familiar with this Google internet connected lenses completely technologically, but seeing the possibilities of it, maybe it can tie up with some such projects and can help it in a sense in bringing it to public what is not normally visible.
I think Sean Charan has a question at the back.
No, just on this note, I think one thing is about documenting and the other is about sharing.
Right.
And that's where there are a lot of documents which doesn't even surface in a certain given time and moment, but it then comes up as different context in different time. But again, on this kind of a very direct online system, it's also the stakeholders through which the document is being shared.
Right.
And how it comes to the public domain is where finally the ethical issue comes up. Otherwise, what is being documented, there are thousands of images which are being recorded every day.
Yeah.
But I don't think that everything surfaces to the kind of platform that
Yeah.
and how it is being surfacing becomes a way. So there are other agencies which becomes more active in that way than the person who is documenting.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the way you use and create interpretation, new interpretation out of archival footages. See, I mean, there is so much is lying there. Even in, I mean, so it will be sensitive when it becomes subversive. Otherwise, everyone is recording everything now.
Yeah.
So there's no dearth of images and information. So it will become critical when it becomes subversive.
Okay, I think we'll end here. Thank you very much, Supriyo, and thank you, Anshuman. That was, and Supriyo particularly for stepping in. Very generous of you. And I certainly enjoyed that discussion. And those of you who haven't seen the film yet, after these insightful comments that Anshuman shared, maybe you take a look at it. It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
The film is on YouTube. It was made several years ago. So at that we'll bring the session to a close and move on to the final session of the festival. The final stage session. There is also music after that, which is we are all looking forward to. But thank you for being here and thank you very much.
Thank you very much.